Good morning, everyone. So, in continuation with our JavaScript tutorial, today we are going to see some another predefined objects whichever supported by JavaScript, right? So, in that, the first is we have document object. So, document object we have discussed so many times, right? So, what is document? So, document represents an entire web page and can be used to access the elements on it, right? It has some properties and methods. So first discuss the write method, which we used many a times in our tutorials, right? Apart from that, two properties we are going to discuss today for the document object, that is a domain and last modified, right? So it returns the domain in which a web page is located, and it returns the date and time a web page was last modified, right? So if you want to manipulate this kind of information, then you just go for the document object. So here is the example, one small script, and here in this script we have document.write method with some properties, that is domain and last modified properties, right? So if you are working on the local host, then it will return the local host, right? If you run this script from the server, XAMPP server, and if you run this script from the remote server, then it will return the domain name, right? Similarly, the last page modified date and time it returns, right? So let's go for the particular example so you can get the idea. So here is the example. In that, one script is written to things we are going to display. One is a domain, another one is the last modified. So let's execute this code. Yep. So here you can see that the domain of this page is nothing, right? So we are locally running, but though we are locally running, we are not using any server, right? Otherwise it will have a local host over here, right? And the last modified page of this particular thing is today's date 10/9/21 11:47, right? So this kind of information, if you want to get, then you can just go for the document object. Now the next is a history object, right? So this is another important one. So history object is the part of window object, right? And it can be accessed through window.history property. It contains the information of URLs visited by the user within a browser window. It has some inbuilt properties, that is the length. It returns the number of URLs in a history list, current, next, and previous, right? So it's a current document URL. It returns the URL of next document. It returns the URL of the previous document, right? So if you want to access this kind of information, then you just go for the history object, right? Now it also has some predefined methods, that is a back and forward. So if you go for a back method, then it loads the previous URL of the history list. And if you go for a forward method, then it loads the next URL in the history list. One important method it has is a go, right? So if you want to directly open a specific URL, right? So, and you just use the go method and you just provide the URL. Suppose, say, for example, I want to open the facebook.com. So here I need to write https://www.facebook.com, right? So I just need to provide the URL and it will be loaded. Okay. So let's go for one example of the history object so you can just get the idea what kind of manipulations you can get, right? So here you can just see that one button is there, so get views button, right? And the function of that is one alert box we have, and the length of the alert is over here. So suppose sometimes if you want to print the number of visitors, number of visits from your for the particular URL, then you just go for this kind of examples. It's a very simple example. Apart from this, you just need to increment the count and all that, right? So that will be work later on in our next videos, right? Whenever it requires. So it's a very simple example. Suppose if you run this, right? So get view counts, then you have access the web page in this session. Okay, right? So that will be listed over here, right? So here you can see that. Okay, and the next is we have a location object. So location object is again a part of window object, right? So we have already discussed the window.location property. So it contains the current URL information. Apart from that, it has some predefined properties like hash, host, it returns the host name, it returns the href, the URL, path name, port, which protocol, and also it returns the query portion of the URL, right? So these are the inbuilt properties we have regarding the location object. And here are some important methods like assign, it loads a new document, right? So as we have discussed in our window object with the open method, then you have here assign method in the location object, reload if you want to reload the current page, right? And the replace, let's say if you want to replace the current document with the new one, then you just use the location object methods, right? So here are the example, right? So let's go for this example so you can get the idea over here how it works. So in this particular example we have three methods, document.write, right? And in these three methods we are going to display three different informations, right? So path name of the current document, href, that is current URL, and which protocol it's using, right? So that let's go for it, right? So right now here are the particular path name and href, right? And as it is the particular local file, it does not contain any URL, it does not contain any protocol, right? But suppose if you access this file from the internet from the remote server, then in that case it will return a particular protocol over here. But right now it returns only the file because it's a local file on current machine, right? So here also you can see we are accessing the file, right? You can see, right? But suppose if I open a www.google.com, then it returns the https colon slash slash. So according to that, it will return. Right now, the current protocol is a file protocol, right? So likewise, you can just go for this location object, right? So here is the particular three objects which are very important again to find the information regarding your particular documents, right? Have a nice day.